the last archetype, even though I say it's not a type, defined as a synergist. Usually, when I learn this stuff and teach it, if they get that far, we keep it separate in concept, because the synergist is not really a type, and he's something that you aren't born with. It's something that you kind of get through training. So I define it, a synergist as somebody who knows whatever system or style they're studying, knows how to use all the archetypes. We're talking about the other 4 types of fighters. Knows how to use each one of them very, very carefully. In other words, he can become any archetype that he wants to if he sees it as a better means to help them get to the end result. Even though he may have his archetype, everybody has their own archetype, right? So, or at least 2. And usually what I found that everybody at least has some degree of the other one. So if you're a charger by nature, let's say you're 80% charger, usually you're going to be about 20% slugger. Right? If you're 20% runner, you might be 80% blocker.
So the chargers and sluggers can go together.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody who was a charger and also they were a runner.
Yeah, that would be
right. I've seen people who have been trained as a runner, right? Trained to stay away to be a runner, but they're really a charger. And then again, once it's training, the archetype is not how they're trained. The archetype is how they're kind of, how they respond to their human instincts to respond to survival, how to control survival, how to control their fear, how they manage their fear. And what are they fearing? Survival. See what I'm saying? Just like animals, right? They respond certain ways, right? So, even in arguments, right? So a synergist is somebody who has his own archetype, but he really knows how to use all the archetypes. He can be a charger for 2 seconds and then put that away. He needs the runner, he needs the runner. Right? He also knows how to use all the 8 ways of attack, and knows he's very diverse in all areas of combat, not just archetypes, but for the sake we're talking about archetypes. So that's why we keep it separate in concept, because as you get better and more experienced, you start to become the synergist. That's the goal. Right? So one thing about like these other archetypes is some people think it's they have a style. Some of these styles is a lot of guys are sluggers out there in the MMA stuff, and they think that being aggressive and being pressure. I'm a pressure fighter, and I come at you and you're like that, right? That is the best way to do that, and they end up getting knocked out, right? Yeah. So doesn't mean none of the archetypes are better than the others, right? They all have their problems. They all have their advantages. Doesn't mean just because Mike Tyson was very good with his archetype, doesn't mean that the slugger archetype is always the best scenario. I mean, he ended up getting beat up, knocked out, right? Some people can get away with their archetype for a while because they also got their attributes that go on top of it. Right? Look at Floyd Mayweather. He's a blocker runner. Right? He's not, he's 47-0 for a reason. Yeah, he can't knock anybody out. He doesn't really try to take it to you, but he is quick, and he is tricky, and he's got the attributes for that. Some other fighters, they don't have, even though they have their archetype, they don't really have the attributes for it either. I've seen a lot of guys who are sluggers who are trying to punch hard, but they just can't hit very hard. They just don't have any leverage, right? But they're swinging hard, and he's a slugger, because every time he gets hit, he's like this in here, and he just has no power. Right? So a synergist kind of knows how to use them all, right? You can pick any single one of them real fast, and pick one and take any of the pieces out. Now within all those archetypes, you have all the techniques and tactics go with it. So every archetype needs to have a very good jab, right? So when you think of a slugger, you go, they don't have a jab. Well, a good one does, right? They all need to have a shield. Charger needs to have a shield big time, right? They all need to have a cross, a hook, an uppercut, back fist. They all need to be diverse in the same techniques. And the way they throw the techniques may be a little different, but they have the understanding of how to use the techniques.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why there's in a system, you have your separate sections in the system. You have your economy striking system, you have your power striking system, you have your defensive system for long range, defensive system for close range, you You have your grappling system, you have your, you have your edge weapon system, you have your impact system, weapon system. You have the archetypes, you have the 8 ways of attack, you have, the 15 principles of interaction, right? And so, you have 8 sections of combat training, right? So so each person, as they go through a system, or this system, and they start to get into the archetypes, right? They also are diverse in know how to use the techniques in their most generic way, and all the tactics in their most generic way. They also know how to use the techniques and tactics in a more advanced way. They know how to, they've mastered their archetype, they know what their archetype is, they know how to use it effectively, and they also know how to defeat each archetype through basic tactics and techniques and strategies. And they also know how to use each archetype against each other. So if you're a blocker by nature, how do you learn how to become a runner and be a charger? Or how do you become a charger and beat your own archetype? Alright? So that's why that strategy and tactics section is gigantic. Just the archetypes are just a small piece of it. It also could be body type strategies. What happens if you're dealing with a guy who's 6'7" and 280 and he's a charger? It's a lot different than going with a 100-pound,
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or how do you also strategy and tactics, how do you fight a precision boxer? How do you fight a wrestler? How do you fight a judo guy? Right? How do you deal with their basic style, and then in that, their archetype and their attributes? Make sense?
Yeah.